Hello and welcome back to Arvania Constructions. And welcome to my first video of this year. Today I'm super excited to share my biggest project yet. A large diorama to celebrate reaching 2,000 subscribers. Thank you all. This thing is pretty big. Since this is an insulation panel, they are made to fit together. And this is why there is an edge that can be put onto the other panel. I start by preparing this XPS foam board, trimming off the excess edges and attaching them to the opposite side to create a seamless base. I smooth out the edge before gluing it down using my hot glue gun. But this is only the beginning and you will decide what happens next. But before we get into that, let's dive into how I built the base. Oh, by the way, this is a pretty early sketch of how I imagined this diorama. And here I have some leftovers from other XPS boards. We had foam puff, small XPS pieces, bigger XPS pieces, and waffle foam. Using these leftover pieces, I shaped some rocks by stacking different sliced pieces. Especially the parts with the waffle texture hold together pretty well using hot glue. But for the smooth parts I use PVA glue and toothpicks to keep them in place. I add these pieces to the border, shaping the terrain into a mountainous formation. Overhangs are cut to make the edges smooth. To carve the landscape, I use a carpet knife and a hot wire cutter. Now that the hot glue has hardened, I can start working on the rocks. I shape them with a knife to make them look more organic. This may take a while, but it's all part of the process and it's worth the time and effort. For these rocks, I use a darker yellow foam with a waffle texture. I hot glued small pieces together to form realistic rock clusters. Then I shaped them with a knife and attached them to the base with PVA glue and some toothpicks. Once the larger rocks and mountains are glued down, I refine the shapes with my knife to seamlessly blend them into the environment. This creates an organic, natural look. Next, I mix up some DIY sculptor mold. My recipe consists of cellulose fibers, as in shredded toilet paper, paper towels or newspaper, plaster, such as modeling plaster, PVA glue for better adhesion, some water, and wood filler, which is optional. I tear the toilet paper into small pieces and soak them in water until they become soft. The amount of paper you have in your bowl determines the amount of sculptor mold you will get after mixing. This can serve as a rough guideline. You may have to repeat the process several times if it dries out too quickly. After soaking, I blend the paper into a pulp and squeeze out any excess water if there is any left. Make sure you keep your fingers out of there, these knives are sharp. Plaster is like white gold. You can make amazing things with it, like these plaster mushrooms I sell in my Etsy shop. But enough of that, let's continue. I add some plaster to the paper pulp. For me, this recipe is more of a guideline than an exact science. Same goes for the glue. I add about 1 to 2 tablespoons of PVA glue to improve adhesion. I adjust the quantities in accordance with my personal preferences. Gradually mix in water until you get a thick moldable paste, but avoid making it too watery. Lastly, I add a tablespoon of wood filler, which is optional. If you add more glue, it will extend the working time. You could also mix in acrylic paints or pigments to pre-color the mixture. This homemade sculptor mold alternative is a cost-efficient and eco-friendly option that provides similar results to the store-bought versions. After everything is mixed, I apply the paste to the mountains. I cover the entire base with the sculptor mold mixture, embedding everything and creating a uniform surface. This will help achieve a natural, organic shape I'm going for. Then I allow it to dry completely. Using a marker, I plan out potential water spots and carve them out with pumpkin carving tools. I actually used them to carve a pumpkin before, which worked way better than carving just foam. I added the final chunks and then I was ready to get out the flamethrower, or at least the creme brulee torch. And off camera I even used a larger gas torch to refine the surface, adding depth and smoothing out the carved areas. Now I'm ready to continue with the second round of sculptor mode. Next up, I open a bucket of wall filler. Mix some of it with bird sand and water to create a thick paste. And then I apply it across the mountains and rocky surfaces to smooth out the transitions between the rocks and the ground. Here you can clearly see the difference between the mountains where the paste has been applied and where it hasn't. After covering up the mountains, I apply the paste to the entire terrain to achieve a nice looking texture. Using my hand, I spread it over the entire surface. I make sure that every part is coated with this paste, leaving no yellow spots behind. Once everything is dry, I start with the first round of painting. A dark brown wash for the ground. This big brush saves a lot of time. It's definitely faster than a regular sized one. After that, I use a grey wash for the mountains. I touched up the edges of the diorama using more wall filler, sanded everything smooth and prepped it for painting. I applied various brown washes with a touch of green, letting the colors blend directly on the mountains to create natural variation and avoid a uniform brown tone. To give the diorama a clean finish, I paint the edges a matte black. Finally, I dry brush everything with a light beige to highlight the textured surface. The elevations and the tiny grains of the bird sand also pop beautifully. The center area of the diorama was heavily affected by the heat, resulting in a bubbly texture that reminds me of an acid-affected surface. I think it turned out to be a fantastic detail, which I wanted to keep for sure. Dry brushing these areas with a red toned brown really adds a lot of character. And here it is. Enjoy some beautiful shots of the diorama in natural sunlight, showcasing the textures and colors. So, what's next, you might ask? This space might not look like much yet, but countless hours have already gone into it. And the best part? This is just a foundation. It is up to you to decide how this diorama evolves. Since this is my 2K subscriber special, I'll be adding a new feature to the diorama every time we hit another milestone. When we reach 3000 subscribers, you get to vote on what comes next. We are building this world one craft at a time. Let me just say, thank you so much for your support, and I can't wait to see where we go from here. If you enjoyed this and want to see what happens next, make sure to like, subscribe and share your ideas in the comments. Every new subscriber brings us closer to 3K and to the next exciting addition to this diorama. Thank you and see you in the next one.